Hi everybody, I'm going to be answering the prompts provided to us in Module 3. So the first question is, in reading the Racial Identity Development Theory introduced in Module 2, how does it help you examine and understand your own racial identity development? So after reading about the Racial Identity Development Theory, I learned that it's something that is shaped by our external environment, and it is also something that is everlasting and ongoing. What informed your racial identity development? I grew up in a predominantly white area, so my twin sister and I were the only Black people at our school. I never really had to think about my racial identity. It was kind of something that was, subconscious. The only time I really had to think about my race was when people would ask me about it. A lot of times in elementary school, people would ask if I was adopted because my mother is white, and I don't really resemble the factors that she had externally. So that was kind of one time I kind of had to sit back and think about my racial identity. But other than that, I didn't really think about it too much in my early childhood years. I did experience a little bit of bullying and racial slurs in the course of elementary school, and my twin sister kind of stayed home from school for a little bit just to mitigate some of that bullying. So that was a time where I had to think about racial identity. But like I said, subconsciously and internally, I didn't really have to think about it unless it was brought up by others. What is the role of race in framing your racial identity? Explain when you first became aware of your racial self and how was it manifested? Like I said, I didn't really think about my racial identity unless it was brought up. So I would say from kindergarten to middle school is when my race would be brought up a lot. Like I said, people would often ask if I was adopted, and that would kind of question my racial identity. A lot of people asked. I remember in kindergarten, this girl told me that my skin tone looked like I had dirt on it. So that was a point in time where I had to think about my racial identity. But I think as I get older, and I've experienced more and learned more about race, and I kind of identify more with my cultural identity, and it's something that I am definitely more self-aware of. Describe a time in which you experienced or witnessed institutionalized racism that was influential in your becoming aware of racial disparities throughout society. If you have never experienced institutional racism yourself, describe it as you understand it now and why you believe you have never experienced it. So I think there are times where people have been prejudiced towards me, but I just haven't been self-aware of that. I remember there was a time where my best friend and I, she was white, we were on the volleyball team, and this was freshman year, and we got into some drama with a different peer, and I was ultimately suspended and kicked off the team. But my friend, who was in the same drama and situation that I was in, she didn't experience those harsh consequences. She was actually able to stay on the team, and she got on-campus suspension. So the disparities there of the consequences were a little different. At the time, I didn't think anything about it. Like I said, I just don't think I was self-aware. But my mom did bring up that she thought that there was some prejudice acts going on there. Even to this day, I don't know what her intent was, but the disparities and those consequences kind of make me question it now as I get older and I reflect. Identify which of Erikson's psychosocial stages of development you were in when you experienced the event you described. How did the events occurring in that developmental stage influence your perception of the event? So at this stage, I was adolescent stage, like 12 to 18. So I was about 15 years old. And it asks, how did the events occurring in that developmental stage influence your perception of the event? Like I said, I think I was just at that stage where I wasn't really self-aware of my racial identity. I didn't really, and as I stated early on, I didn't really think about my cultural identity or systemic barriers or racial injustices. Those weren't really topics that I really discovered until I grew academically and started learning about it in school. And I'm so glad and I'm so fortunate that I'm able to share these ideas with my peers. And I'm just really glad that I opened up my eyes to the systemic barriers and racial injustices that are still being faced today. And I'm just so fortunate that I'm able to learn about health disparities in low-income areas as opposed to high-income areas. There's a really large gap in access to healthcare and access to quality housing and quality foods and just quality living standards in general. So the last question that asks, applying CRT, describe one action you can take to challenge power structures that perpetuate racial inequality, So as a social worker, I feel that one of my due diligences I can carry out is to advocate for reform policies that disproportionately affect people of color. So I really want to start looking into that and see how I can be a voice for those in need that are experiencing, that are experiencing the negative consequences of these systemic barriers. So just really, I think what my goal will be is to advocate for policy reform and be a voice for those who don't have the power to have a voice. I would really like to advocate for them.